Okay, just because your physical therapist is a star performer doesn't mean you have to promote them into a clinical director position. And this is exactly, I was just on a call recently with an owner, and they were saying that they were running into an issue where they took their star performer and they moved them into a clinical director role. And everybody thought it was going to be great, the person included. And we're about 4 to 6 weeks in, and there's just something that's not working. The team's not, buying into what they're saying. There's a lack of trust there. The person's a little bit more of authoritarian than they thought they were going to be. And now it's just, we got to kind of walk back to the decision. And, promoting somebody into a clinical director role or a leadership team, I'm not saying it's a one-way door decision, but if you go and you realize that this isn't working out, yes, there's you can go back into the previous role, no harm, no foul, but it leaves a mess, right? And a lot of times what happens is when people get demoted and they realize there's not upwards growth, they might go somewhere else. People might get demoted, but they still want the pay because you bump their pay, right? It's just all this stuff. So how do we identify the right person to move into a clinical director role? And then how do we kind of fix this skill gap that happens a lot of times when we have people in a producer role and then we move them and then realize it's different skills? And then ultimately, how do we make sure that the team is going to them for advice and info and answering questions versus going around them and then going to you? So the first thing I want you guys to understand is whenever we're identifying employees, we could always kind of break these down into this, kind of like this employee matrix, if you will. Let's do, this is where we're going to have things like clinical or core values, right? Core values will be over here. So above the line, below the line. And then we have like productivity, which by the way, core values plus productivity, that equals performance. So if we're doing a performance review, we have core values, we have productivity. So when we're looking at this thing, we're either going to have tier 1 employees, we'll have tier 2, we'll have 3s, and then we'll have 4. So I'm a big fan of anything below the line here. We are just going to, free up these people's future. We're going to go ahead and fire these folks, even if they have really high productivity, but low core values, or low core values and low productivity. We've just found that it's very difficult to re-onboard and get these people to change their behaviors. So yes, there's like a 20% chance that they could become, someone with high core values and high productivity. It's just really good to just let these people go. So that kind of leaves us with these 2 buckets here at the top. Now, what we're trying to do is get the majority of our team to be tier 1 employees. These are people with high core values and high productivity. So if we're looking at this thing from like a producer role, right? So these are your producers. These are your physical therapists, your PTAs, your OTs, your speech, whatever that looks like. We're going to identify hey, this is like the one of the one. Like these people are up here, and I think that they are ready to ascend, right? So I think they're ready to ascend. What most people do is they'll identify who this person is, and then they'll say hey, I think this would be a great fit, and we should move them into a clinical director position, right? So if we're kind of keeping consistent with the themes here, this is more like a manager or unifier, right? So unification or manager of the people. And what typically happens here is you move them up into this role and you expect them to be the same person, right? So the high core values, high production, their patients love them, staff love them, all these things. And you move them into this role, and power will only amplify who someone is as a person. So, they might have issues with time management or, being able to make proper decisions. But then when you move them up into this role, it really gets amplified. Some people will have some core value issues, but they're so productive that you're kind of, not really paying attention to them. And then you move them over here and it's it's not working out. So the biggest thing that we want to understand here is when we move someone here into a clinical director role, right, there's a 75% chance that it is not going to work out. And there's only a 25% chance that it is, right? So what do I mean by that? It's just if we're looking at this thing, we want to have them become a tier 1 employee, right? A tier 1 clinical director, where they now still have high core values and they also are highly productive as a clinical director. Okay. So with that being said, it's just they could be low productivity, they could be low core values, or they could be low and low. So therefore, there really is a 75% chance that they're just not going to cut it as a clinical director. Now, again, core values are core values. So hopefully we identified our values correctly. So they should have the same values. So the key here is how do they become productive as a clinical director. And we see this all the time where people move them into the position and then try to learn it. But I'm a big fan of like, well, if you're going to move them in the position, you're going to try to learn it. You bump their pay, you bump their perks. There's, minimal incentive here to kind of get better. You already gave them everything up front. And then if it doesn't work out, you got to kind of walk it back. How do we prevent that, right? So we kind of go back over here. The biggest thing is like when we're looking for productivity, right? So when we're looking for more specifically, productivity as a clinical director, it's just like, great, like what skills, right, do they need to learn in order to be a really good clinical director? So the first thing that I always want to do is I want to kind of sit here and map out like what are some of the skills that this person needs to be able to learn to go from, PT or possibly PTA, and we're going to move them into a clinical director position. So first and foremost, we got to identify what is the job or the duties of the clinical director. So the first thing is they need to be able to hire, onboard, and train people, right? So they need to be able to, right? Getting out of treatment as an owner is one thing, but getting out of hiring, onboarding, and training, it's totally different game. So they have to be responsible and they need to know how to hire, onboard, and train people. Number two is they need to know how to set proper expectations. Like people need to know what does good look like. More specifically, the company, the department, and the role. So company will be our mission, our vision, our core values, and our goals. And then we'll have both department and role KPIs, but more specifically, we're going to have job descriptions. Okay. So they need to know exactly what good looks like for the people that work inside the department. Number three is going to be accountability. So once people know what good looks like, we got to hold them accountable. And accountability is just expectations plus measurement. And then the multiplier here is feedback. So this person, as a clinical director, has to be really, really good at understanding KPIs, more specifically company, department, and role, right? And then they also have to be able to provide people, or one of the higher level skills, how you don't have to give people feedback per se. You have to create kind of this feedback system where I'm getting feedback from my team and I tell them if they're on or off track, right? So how cool is it like when you have like self-managing team versus like micro management, where it's just like, hey, this is my numbers for the week. This is how I think I'm doing. What are your thoughts? And then as a coach or as a clinical director, you can come in and, help them one way or another. So we have to be able to provide proper feedback. Okay. So, and by the way, feedback is the multiplier here. Number four is they have to have really good communication, right? Comms needs to be good. Communication to me is just taking people from a state of confusion and then moving them over into a state of clarity, right? So that's how I know they're really good communicators. Number five is going to be cadence. Okay. So this is their ability to run one-to-one, one to team, and then also one to many. When it comes to like workshops or networking, they have to have this ability to be almost a communicator, right? So it's kind of like, yes, they could produce and they're still treating patients, but they're going to manage people, but then they're also going to learn another skill set of communication and, presentation and networking, right? So what's their cadence? Are they running meetings? Are they hosting one-on-ones? And then finally here, they have to be really good at recognition. I said finally, I got one more thing after this, but recognition and praise, right? Are they able to give people, because recognition is how people get retained, right? You tell people to do something, they do it, and then you don't give them recognition, it's not going to get repeated. But if you tell someone to do something, you recognize them, not only is it going to be repeated, but you're going to retain some of our star producers. And then finally, too, they need to be able to, right, ascend people, right? They need to be able to ascend people. They need to be able to descend people or de-escalate. And then they also have to be responsible for termination, right? And that's kind of the whole, like they're managing people, policies, and processes. So they have to learn these skills. So why did I just show you guys this, right? Because first of all, if you're going to move someone into it's a clinical director, there's different things for clinical director, office manager, so on and so forth. But now I have like, what is my skill gap? So I could go and I could say, okay, Joey, right? So let's say my business partner, Joey, is going to move into a clinical director position here. And I say, okay, Joey, is he really good at hiring, onboarding, and training people? So from a scale of like, 0 to 5, I could then grade, his skills here. So let's just say hiring, onboarding, and training. He hasn't really done that before. So I'll put him at like, a 1 or 2 out of 5. And then I'll put expectations. Oh, the reason why I'm thinking about moving him into the clinical director role. So he's got great standards. He sets the standards. He's holding people accountable. He's doing a really good job there. I see some leadership skills. People are going to them for advice, right? He does a good job on his weekly wrap-ups and feedback. So, this is a 5 out of 5. And, when it comes to accountability, I'll put him down for like a 3 out of 5 because I think measurement and feedback could be improved. So I'll put 3 out of 5. Communication, other than some little instances here or there, he's a 4 out of 5. He really hasn't had a chance to run any meetings yet. So 2 out of 5. Recognition and praise, he does a really good job there. And then as far as ascending, descending, termination, he really hasn't learned the skill set of that yet. So now when I'm looking at this thing, I could identify where his deficits are. So I know when I'm looking at this, I have to train him up on hiring, onboarding, and training. We got to get a little bit better with measurement and feedback. We also have to get him incorporated in some of our meetings and cadence. And then if we have any ascension, descension, termination opportunities here, he's going to also be responsible for those. So now what I want to do, which is really, really important, is I know our current situation skill gap is all the things that I just listed, right? So he lacks these 4 things and he's really good at these 3 things. So now what I want to do is I want to create like a little bit of a mentorship plan here. And I'm going to do like our clinical director in performance plan, right? So we'll just call it a performance improvement plan or whatever. It's not like whatever. It's like, clinical director mentorship plan, whatever. Like whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter, right? And you're kind of looking at this thing and it's just like, okay, well, how long will I be able to, I would love for him to do like the weekly meetings, some one-to-ones, maybe even help run our quarterly. Okay, so that might take like 2 months to do, okay? So I'm looking at this thing, it's just like, okay, we're going to give this 2 months, maybe even 3 months. And we're going to put him on this mentorship track. So, I think 2 to 3 months is more than fine. And then what you're going to do is you're going to map out what should we be learning each week. And it's all going to compound on each other. So now all of a sudden you're going to be like, okay, well, here's the low level skills. Here's a little bit more high level skills, like week number 1, 2, 3, this is what we're going to learn. And you create like this custom program. By the way, with AI and all this other stuff, you could put like, hey, I got 90 days. Here's a skill gap. It's just like, create a mentorship program for us. And now you guys will meet on a weekly or 2 times a week, depending on how severe the skills are. Or if you're a clinical director or you're trying to promote and you already have like 4 clinical directors because you have multiple clinics, then do a mentor-mentee kind of program. And you don't have to be the one training. Your star clinical directors can do the training. Okay. So now what's going to happen is after, right, your desired situation is going to be, we are going to promote them to clinical director. Woo, right? Everything's done. No, everything's not done. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we train them to become a clinical director. But now what I want to do is I want to have them on a 30, 60, 90-day plan to actually become a tier 1 clinical director, right? Because just because you're a clinical director doesn't mean anything. It's just a title. So now what I want to do is I want to be able to go 30, 60, 90 days. And I want to be able to go, let's just say the owner is still heavily into this versus another clinical director. And now we have this new person. Well, guess what? When we first start, I'm 100%, right? Everybody's coming to me. I'm doing all the hiring, the onboarding, the training, the running the meetings. I'm doing all of it. I'm analyzing the scorecards, the weekly wrap-ups, and I'm 100%. So now if I'm going to try to pass these duties to them, well, I'm 100% and then they're 0. And now we're 80 and they're 20. And, now we're 60 and they're 40. And now I'm 40 and they're 60. And now I'm 20 and they are going to be 80. And then I am going to be 90%. And then, or excuse me, messed up, right? I'm going to be 10% and then they're going to be 90. I don't know if I get to 0 and 100, right? Because I still want to be able to meet with my leadership team and coach them up and train them. So I might stop somewhere around here, but I don't do all people coming to me. I don't have them bypass, but this is me just coaching and mentoring them. And again, this is going to take place from 30, 60, 90 days. Okay. So you have about, 2 to 3 months to train. We have 30, 60, 90 days to get them into that tier 1 status and kind of keep them there. Right. So now what we want to do is after we get to this level here and they actually become a true clinical director, and they're right where we need them to be trained, and we get to that 25% versus that 75, and we kind of de-risk this position, now I can go ahead and significantly bump their pay. Now I can give them better benefits, whatever we discussed. Now I can give them profit sharing, and I could basically give them a reward for going through this process. By the way, like, you know, benefit could just be like a clinical director bonus bump, right? You automatically, once you're done with the, you know, the 4 to 6 month training, you give them a bump in pay, whatever that looks like. So this is a really easy way to kind of protect yourself as an owner when you are promoting people into these leadership positions. Now, the last thing that I kind of want to leave you guys with, and if you guys, there's 2 things. If you want to get my, it's kind of like a nice little, I guess like an analyzer here to figure out, like, you know, who gets it, who wants it, who has the capacity to do it. And then ultimately you could come up with like our job description. So our job description will be there to download. And then below it, you'll be able to rank based on the skills that this person should have and be able to really see the deficit. So if you guys want that, just click on the description below and be able to get access. And then the other thing, what I want to kind of just teach you guys really quick is that most individuals, once they, you know, kind of promote this person into this role, you know, there's not like this ongoing check and connect and what should I do? But it's just like, we want to make sure from a leadership standpoint that we have ongoing communication and these people are being edified to make decisions. Because if people are coming to you for the decision, the whole thing just got ruined, because we want to make sure if we delegate tasks, we'll create followers. If we delegate authority, we'll create leaders. So we want to be able to edify our new clinical director and be able to put them in a position of power. So if that's something that you guys would be interested in, we do have, which is really cool. We do have either the live, depending on, you know, when this is, that you guys are seeing this, we have the live or the replay of our leader versus manager workshop. So if you guys want to click on that and be able to get access to that, to learn not just this, but more tips and tricks when it comes to like, what do leaders do and what do managers do, like in the whole gamut, it's just like, that is something that you guys could be able to get your hands on as well. So when we're looking at this thing, just to kind of recap, it's just like, we want to be able to identify, do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it? And then ultimately we want to give them that first 30 to 60 days fixing the skills that they lack. And then we'll move them into the position in a 30, 60, 90-day cadence. And then once they're in the position, then we increase pay, we increase bonuses, we do profit sharing, so on and so forth. Okay, so hopefully this was helpful for you guys. I will see you on the next one.